The dark side tempts the main characters in Star Wars, which is a recurring theme. Some, such as Anakin Skywalker and Ben Solo, succumb to the dark side. Others, such as Luke Skywalker and Rey, resisted its allure. Luke, on the other hand, came dangerously close to succumbing to its allure in Return of the Jedi. Given that Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy, known as the Jedi Praxium, it is the epitome of a Jedi done right. What drives Luke to use the dark side? And why did it save them when he used it? Let's investigate. Let's begin. Luke allowed students to have families. With the benefit of hindsight, Luke could differentiate his order from the original Jedi of the Clone Wars while still upholding the ideals and spirit that represented what the Jedi stood for as an organization. For one thing, he was much more lenient with the established policies and regulations. He started by assembling his Jedi, the first thing he did. His Jedi didn't need to give up their families or jobs to become a part of the Jedi Order, so they were free to come and go as they pleased. Dathomir, which was a student of Luke Skywalker's, was one of his apprentices. One of the most controversial decisions Luke made was allowing and encouraging his students to marry and start families. He reasoned that this would lead to the birth of more sensitive children and provide his students with something to love and protect in the galaxy. According to Luke Skywalker, one of the most severe flaws of the old Jedi Order was their prohibition on attachments. This was the primary cause of Darth Vader's downfall, as well as the downfall of many others. Luke also claims that this was one of the most severe flaws of the old Jedi Order. Next, Skywalker allowed studies of the shadows. Today, acolytes of the galaxy will discuss one of the fascinating aspects of the Jedi Praxium. Luke Skywalker allowed some of his students to study the dark side. It's time to start another Holocaust and learn the truth about this dangerous gamble. But there are a few things I would like to clarify. First and foremost, Luke chose which students were allowed to study Sith lore and usually waited until they reached knighthood. Even back then, studying was always done under the watchful eye of a Jedi Master. The goal here was not for Luke's students to use the dark side, but to become more acquainted with it. Luke approached the situation with a more know thy enemy mindset. He believed that excluding any exposure to the dark side would be detrimental to the students. They would be better able to defend against it if they knew its ways and how it worked. If you had a healthy understanding of what it provides versus what it takes from you, you would be less likely to fall victim to it. You might have noticed, so many of the old Jedi succumbed to the dark side because they were taught to deny it or pretend it never existed in the first place. Moving on, why Luke Skywalker never turned to the dark side? Despite being tempted by the dark side of the Force on numerous occasions, Luke Skywalker never succumbed to it, at least not in Star Wars canon. Throughout Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda taught Luke the light side of the Force. But when it came time to confront his father in Return of the Jedi for a second duel with the Sith Lord, he considered using the dark side of the Force for a brief moment. When Luke was shown in Return of the Jedi promotional material wearing all black and standing next to Darth Vader, Lucasfilm knew what they were teasing. Despite Vader and Emperor Palpatine's efforts to entice Luke to the dark side, the Jedi Knight saved his father and defeated the Empire. It wasn't until he was training his nephew Ben Solo that he was tempted by the dark side once more, this time to murder his flesh and blood. While he did not do this, he was seduced by the dark side. When the original Star Wars trilogy ended, Mark Hamill predicted that Luke would temporarily turn to the dark side of the Force, only for light to triumph eventually. According to Hamill, George Lucas disagreed with that idea because it would have been too dark. After all, Star Wars films are first and foremost intended for children, or so Lucas believed when he was still in charge. Following that, Luke being a great Jedi. Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker in Star Wars Return of the Jedi, Lucas's decision not to explore the darker themes surrounding Luke's temptation makes sense. But there could be an in-universe reason why Luke Skywalker always strayed from the dark side of the Force. Given that he's never been drawn specifically to one side of the Force, it stands to reason that Luke is a gray Jedi. He uses both the light and dark sides while maintaining internal balance. As a result, he never succumbed to the dark side because he had no reason to. According to him, only using the light side of the Force could lead to hubris, which brought down the Jedi Order before the Age of the Empire. The concept of Great Jedi in Star Wars is gaining traction among fans, thanks partly to Rey's journey in the sequel trilogy, harnessing powers traditionally representing the light and dark sides. Furthermore, having a yellow lightsaber represents her willingness to walk the line on both sides. Luke was the first to arrive. It's worth noting, however, that Luke did succumb to the dark side in the expanded universe, or Legends. Still, because those stories are no longer canon, his reputation as a savior of the galaxy remains unblemished. Next, Luke employed power of the Force. When it came to confront the true darkness, they were almost defenseless against its calls. Luke regularly employs many Force abilities in Return of the Jedi to reflect this philosophy. He enters Jabba's palace and quickly gains control of the Gamorrean guards. Luke would perfect a light side variant of Force lightning called Force Judgment by using Force Choke to gain entrance to the palace and allowing him to passage later. While Force Judgment did not draw from the dark side, it used a single strong sense of justice or righteous rage. This core part creates a sort of loophole to most dark side abilities. A Jedi's rage was always misinterpreted as a manifestation of the dark side because they were never taught to control it. A Jedi's rage stems from righteous rage and a strong desire to right wrongs and pushes those who have egregiously committed wicked transgressions without remorse. This opens up a new world of Force abilities that are light side variants of traditional dark side powers that are far more aggressive. Many Jedi are often terrified by the prospect of going down this path in the first place, having spent their entire lives believing that any acts in the Force motivated by rage or aggression are purely dark side in nature. Moving on, the act of love. A Jedi's fury corresponds very closely with Kyle Katarn's philosophy. He didn't believe that any Force ability was inherently light or dark, but rather that it depended entirely on one's intentions. As a result, Katar became a mighty Jedi, rivaling even Luke's powers for a time as he managed to fully control dark side abilities without succumbing to their allure. These claims are somewhat supported by Luke, who has on numerous occasions turned dark side abilities on their heads by introducing the act of love. Luke has used an inverted version of Duan Mak, one of Sith's favorite abilities, on Darth Vader himself, an ability that Darth Vader had used to significant effect when dueling him on the second Death Star. Rather than belittling or provoking words to gain an advantage in an opponent's mind, Luke spoke words of love and compassion into his father's heart, stoking the conflict within the Dark Lord. This is the true secret for a Jedi to find balance within the Force, remaining light in one's intentions while acknowledging the utility and purpose of the dark. This is similar to how the ancient Jedi Order practiced their teachings, though Luke may have been more cautious than they were. It's an excellent approach for a Jedi to take. It could be one of the best Jedi philosophies to follow. Darkness always arises in an ever-evolving galaxy, and it's critical to understand the tools of the dark side so that one can adequately defend against it or perhaps even use it when the need arises, but only with the purest of intentions is this ever possible. Finally, the key of lightsaber combat. As Luke pointed out in Form 5, lightsaber combat is one of the most aggressive forms, and mastery of this form is the most critical requirement to fulfill to use these abilities. Compassion was the essential ingredient. When they attacked, the former relied heavily on powerful blows and used their strength almost brutally. But Luke never lost his composure when he used this form because he was firmly established in the mindset of compassion and had a strong desire to put an end to a conflict as quickly as possible. Imagine that someone doesn't interact with the shadow side while simultaneously grounding themselves in compassion and mercy. In that case, he's destined to fall and go down the slippery slope that many Jedi have, including Exar Kun, Anakin Skywalker, Count Dooku, and many more, and become a victim of the darkness itself. In other words, he's doomed to fall victim to darkness. On the other hand, Luke perfected the legends of continuity of the Jedi Order and rectified all of the errors that were committed during the previous era. It is ironic that the very thing that the Jedi fear the most, the dark side, which Luke Skywalker led into and allowed to be studied, was what ultimately resulted in the perfect iteration of both the Jedi Order and the Jedi Code. So tell me, what are your thoughts on this proposition? Do you concur with the conclusion that we reached? And if you were sensitive to the Force, would you instead choose to walk in the footsteps of the ancient Jedi, given to the raging heat of the Sith, or follow in Luke Skywalker's footsteps? Please let us know in the comment section below. So this concludes our video for today. I sincerely hope that the experience was enjoyable. Please hit the like and subscribe button so that we can keep you posted on new videos. Thank you for watching.